Doesn't seem to be possible.
Welcome to the latest program of the OPC's Book Night series. I am Patricia Cranz, the Executive Director. Tonight we will listen to Barbara Demick discuss her book, Daughters of the Bamboo Grove, with Ed Wong. As tens of thousands of families with adopted children from China turn to DNA testing, new connections are emerging among the 160,000 Chinese adoptees worldwide, upending what many of them thought they knew about their origins. In following one family's journey through loss and rediscovery, Daughters of the Bamboo Grove illuminates the collective trail of those still searching for the truth of where they come from and who they are. Barbara Demick is a prize-winning author and foreign correspondent. Previous books include Eat the Buddha, Life and Death in a Tibetan Town, and Nothing to Envy, Ordinary Lives in North Korea. She was bureau chief for the Los Angeles Times in Beijing and Seoul, and previously reported from the Middle East and the Balkans for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Ed Wong has reported for the New York Times for 25 years, working for 13 of those as a correspondent and bureau chief from China and Iraq. His family memoir, At the Edge of Empire, an epic story of modern China, was published in 2024. If any audience members are in NYC, he will be speaking out the book this Wednesday at 6 p.m. at the Museum of Chinese in America in downtown Manhattan. Details are on their website and in the chat. We've also listed links to buy the books in the chat, as well as a link to a past OPC program where Ed discussed his memoir. Please put your questions in the chat as well, and Barbara and Ed will get to them in the second half of the program. So let's begin the conversation.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for that amazing introduction, Patricia. It's very generous of you. I'm glad to be here with Barbara, a close friend of mine. We first met when we were both reporting in China. I was always in awe of Barbara's reporting, the fact that she managed to get out into the provinces, reporting on what was happening with ordinary people across different parts of the country, including in very rural areas. And so I think the story that we're about to hear tonight is very much rooted in that tradition of reporting. And early on in my tenure in Beijing, I started noticing these stories on adoption that Barbara was doing for the LA Times. And she did several that had a huge impact. But the story that she recounts in this book, Daughters of the Bamboo Grove, is singular even by the standards of the stellar reporting she was doing in this issue. So I wanted to ask Barbara first if she could maybe provide a little bit of context about why she started doing reporting on adoptions from China, adoptions of young children overseas, and then how she came across this particular story.
Thanks, Ed, and thank you for your kind words. I was always interested in Chinese adoption. I have a very good friend who adopted in China in 2002, and I actually went to China when she picked up her daughter, and I was always very curious, and I've got to say a little bit suspicious about the narrative that all these girls were thrown away. The prevailing story was that Chinese wanted boys. This is true, and that their girls were, tossed away like kittens. And without having been in China very long, I found it hard to believe that healthy human babies were discarded so casually. China has a great recycling culture, one of the things that I love. Um, so, it was always on my mind, and this goes back to 2008, and Ed can talk about this. It was a curiously open period in China, um, ahead of the 2008 Summer Olympics.
Mm.
The Chinese government lifted some of the requirements that we get advance permission to travel around the country. So we just went, we were just going all over the place. And at the same time, it was the early days of social media. I think a lot of the Chinese were using QQ. Weibo was starting around then. Is that right? And
Yeah.
we were
Well,
picking up,
before WeChat, the days
yeah,
of WeChat, which is
yeah,
now,
yeah.
you know.
We were picking up reports from these remote villages that you would never have heard anything from in the past, that that babies were being taken. And I don't know. I mean, I think this is a very China heavy audience, but this was the area of the one child policy. um, most families weren't allowed to have more than one child. And the punishments were very, very harsh, a year's salary, several years' salary worth of fines, homes were demolished, farm animals were taken. And, we were getting reports that babies were taken too.
Yeah. And so you started making trips down to mostly central and southern China, if I recall. And then in Hunan province, you came across this one family. Can you tell us a little bit about how you first heard about this family?
Sure, sure. I'm gonna show some photos now. So just bear with me. I hope that everything works. Okay, let's see. View slideshow. Okay. Okay. Is everybody seeing a map?
All right. And there's Hunan right there,
Yeah,
right in
there's Hunan, and actually, I'm going to start in Guizhou. This area, sort of south central China, was where most of the adopted kids came from, and these were rural, very, very poor areas, um, and this is just a propaganda poster. I mean, the one child policy was the state policy. There were more people working for what was euphemistically called family planning than in the People's Liberation Army. I mean, they were just, doing this policy, with a vengeance. All the resources were directed at it. And this is one of the first families I interviewed. They were in Guizhou, and I don't know if you can tell from the photo, but they were extremely, extremely poor. This was a village that we had to hike up a goat path to get to. And they had, as you can see, three girls. The father had had a vasectomy, but after he had the vasectomy, he realized that his wife was already pregnant, and their baby daughter was taken away. That these officials from family planning used to come to the village, and like they'd look around for, you can see clothesline here, for diapers. No, no, no disposable diapers here, rags hanging on the clotheslines, baby clothes. And this was a really, really remote village, which I think was part of the point, is that most of the adults were illiterate and easily taken advantage of. And then after this family, I moved to Hunan province. And the tall guy in the striped shirt standing under the Mao portrait. And I'm showing you these so you get a sense of how poor these families were. The guy who's standing up, his name um, is Lee, and he had a daughter who was taken away. She was his firstborn child, um, but his wife was from another province and they hadn't registered the marriage. And this is something not well understood about the one-child policy. It's not just one child. You have to have a registered marriage, which, many people would just have a ceremony in the countryside. Um, but this guy, it was his firstborn child. He had gone to, after the baby was born, this was very typical. He had gone to do migrant work um, in the city to raise some cash for the child. And the family planning officials tricked his father who was almost blind, into taking the baby. And this is going to explain soon how I found out about this story. This guy, Lee, who is not well educated, was very smart and very proactive. And he organized a petition drive. Petitioning is a Chinese custom of petitioning to the emperor or to the Communist Party powers that be for relief. And he organized a group of villagers whose kids were taken to write up a petition saying, our children were taken, bring back our children, where are our children? They had no idea at that time where the children were. And, as you might surmise from this document, this is the last page. Many of these parents were illiterate or semi-literate. So under the law in China, actually, this was trying to comply with international law. Before a baby could be put up for adoption, they had to put an ad in the newspaper saying looking for family. But these were always in, obscure legal ads, legal newspapers, something that people in the village would never see, even if they were reading newspapers. Now we're getting to the village where I found these girls. This is all 2009. I went to a village called Gaofeng in Hunan, and I had heard that there was, at this point, I had interviewed many families, but I had heard that in this village, there was a family who had twins, and that one twin was taken away. This is the route into the village. All of these villages were like this. They were very remote and hard to reach. And again, this was kind of by design. These people were sort of cut off from the legal system, and they thought from journalists.